So, I've been seeing a trendy new conspiracy theory doing the rounds on Facebook recently. You know, Facebook, the birthplace of all intelligent debate and fact checking. Apparently, Covid-19 isn't really a virus, but radiation sickness caused by the rollout of the 5G network. Well, we ought, for argument's sake, to get a little clarity on what 5G, Covid-19, and radiation sickness are. And that way we can see if there is actually a link to be established and if there's any value in what these people are saying. So what's 5G? 5G is 5th generation Wi-Fi for cellular communication. It works by using a tower, like all the previous versions, to send encoded data through radio waves. What makes it better than its predecessor, which was 4G, is how these packets of data are encoded. It uses an encoding system called orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, or OFDM, which splits a single data stream onto different narrowband channels simultaneously, so it reduces interference and it increases the encoding efficiency by around 30% over 4G. This results in faster transmission of network data from cell towers to individual devices, and it will also see the prevalence of beamforming technology, which, rather than sending out waves in a large net to be picked up by devices, it will allow individual beams to hit a device, further increasing speed and efficiency. Now, there are 3 different types of 5G: millimeter, midband and low band, and it's the first of these that people are getting concerned about without realising that whilst the frequency can reach up to 72 GHz, the range is extremely short and has trouble penetrating walls and windows. So this isn't what we'll see in our homes. Instead, it'll be the midband that most consumers will interact with, not only for practical purposes but for cost purposes as well. It'll keep the cost for the consumer similar to that of 4G. Midband will operate at a frequency of around 5 GHz. Keep in mind that when talking about frequencies and bands, we're talking about the radio waves, and radio waves are actually a form of radiation. So what exactly is radiation? Well, if you paid attention in your high school physics class, you might recall that radiation is the emission of energy taken in the form of waves or particles. There are different types of radiation, and visible light is actually a type. There are also microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays and gamma rays. These are all types of electromagnetic radiation which consists of waves. So simply put, the shorter the wave, the more dangerous the radiation. You see, radiation such as X-rays and gamma rays consist of short waves and they ionize. That means that they strip atoms of their electrons. Radio waves are too long to achieve ionization of atoms, meaning that they're non-ionizing and largely harmless. Radiation is everywhere, in all different forms. Now, you can get sick from radiation. It's called acute radiation sickness, and you get it from exposure to ionizing radiation. Early symptoms include nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, and maybe even breathing difficulties. After a while, you can suffer from infections and bleeding, and the main long-term effect of radiation sickness is usually different forms of cancer. You see, ionizing radiation triggers a process in the body called autophagy, where the cells basically diminish or destroy dysfunctional components of themselves. But guess what? Radiation sickness is pretty rare and is usually the result of exposure at a nuclear reactor. Now, flash forward to 2019-2020, and there's another sickness going around at the moment, and everyone and their uncle knows about it, because most of the world is in the grips of a lockdown due to how quickly it's spread. It's Covid-19. Now, Covid-19 belongs to a family of viruses called coronaviruses, which affect mammals and birds. So, this new coronavirus is one of a few viruses that belong to the same class of rather large in size viruses. Others that you might have heard of are SARS and MERS. Now, coronaviruses were actually discovered in chickens in the 1930s, and later mice, and of course humans in the 1960s. In fact, the common cold is caused by coronaviruses 229E and OC43. They work by attaching to cells. Once they've been absorbed by the cell, they replicate by having the cell copy its proteins before being released from the cell and attaching to others. That's a rather simple way to put it, but it's basically what's happening. Now, in severe cases, this can trigger the body's immune system to start destroying cells, leading to complications and maybe even death. The symptoms of COVID-19 include a fever, a dry cough, and shortness of breath. Now, according to the conspiracy theorists, the emergence of 5G has caused radiation sickness, and we're being told by those naughty guys and gals in the deep state that it's actually a virus called Covid-19.
Are you on an E?
Firstly, the symptoms of radiation sickness and Covid-19 are not even remotely similar, other than the shortness of breath thing, and that's actually a relatively rare symptom in radiation sickness. From what I can see, this argument stems from the fact that a cell tower in China was torn down by people around the time of the initial outbreak of Covid-19. But this was completely miscaptioned by shoddy journalists, because a tower was torn down. However, it was ripped down due to citizens' concerns over state surveillance, and it had nothing at all to do with the epidemic. In fact, South Korea has had 5G since April 2019, and there have been no issues with health and well-being. Now, there's a tweak, a variation of the conspiracy theory that states that the deep state is using the global pandemic as a cover to sneak through legislation pertaining to the installation of the 5G network. That is also complete and utter horseshit. Firstly, EE have been using Kevin Bacon to advertise 5G since the latter part of 2019. Not to mention, I used to work in telecommunications, and we've known openly and transparently about 5G since 2018. That's 2 years ago. Nothing is being stealth past. COVID-19 is a virus, and it is not being caused by the installation of the 5G network. So what's going on? Well, similar to other Facebook conspiracy theories, like anti-vaccination or COVID-19 being created in a lab as a bioweapon, this idea propagates itself on people's lack of understanding. For a start, coronaviruses are nothing new, although COVID-19 is a new strain. However, coronaviruses were first isolated long before the advent of Wi-Fi, and I stress isolated because they were likely around for longer, it's just that we first noticed them in the 30s. Secondly, there's this idea that 5G is military grade tech and it's 10,000 times more powerful than 4G. That's simply untrue. The OFDM encoding system is, as I've said, 30% more efficient than the 4G LTE system of encoding, which makes 5G around 100 times faster than 4G. But in terms of frequency, whilst 4G LTE was operating at around 2 GHz, the mid-band 5G, which is consumer level stuff, that's what will be being pumped out for us, will be around 5 GHz. That is not, through any leap of mathematical logic, 10,000 times more powerful. As for radiation in general, remember that in order to travel the distances they have to travel, radio waves need to have a long wavelength. This makes it non-ionizing radiation. It cannot detach electrons from atoms. In fact, the UV radiation from the sun is significantly more dangerous to us than 5G. So if you're actually worried about 5G radiation, which you shouldn't be, you probably ought to stay indoors for the rest of your life because the sun is dosing you with radiation of a shorter wavelength, making it more harmful. So, no matter which way you look at it, these conspiracy theories are flat out wrong. No, COVID-19 is not actually radiation poisoning. No, 5G is not going to give you radiation poisoning. And no, governments are not trying to sneak through legislation for the installation of the 5G network. But I suspect that the people who espouse such conspiracy theories have a general distrust in science, which is why they don't take the time to educate themselves of the scientific facts.
Speak in a language we can understand, Mr. Scientist.
So I feel this is falling on deaf ears. But I have to say, scientists aren't out there trying to tell people what to think. They're out there making observations, these days extremely accurate observations, which form a set of facts about the world. Of course, you don't have to listen to these sets of facts, but then at least be honest about the fact. You're basically putting your fingers in your ears and ignoring the way the world is. Instead, what tends to happen is these morons claim that they are the ones in possession of the truth and that evil scientists are lying. Oh my god. Next we'll be saying that Covid-19 is being used to cover up the fact that the Large Hadron Collider is being upgraded as we speak. Yeah, that's happening, and it's not dangerous. In conclusion, if you believe that 5G is somehow poisoning us, you probably ought to have paid more attention to your physics teacher in high school.
You're wrong, and you're a grotesquely ugly freak. Thanks.
I've been DK Priori. Peace.